Welcome back to the Talk Money with Tish podcast, where we bring you real conversations about money, mindset, and making legacy moves. I'm Tish.
And I'm Christina. And whether you're just getting started, doing well and ready for more, or focused on building and protecting a legacy, we're here to talk and walk with you every step of the way.
So, today we're digging into a really hot topic right now. So, tariffs, trade, and the economy. This might sound a little complicated, but stick with us. What we're really going to talk to you about is how to protect your money, your business, and your future.
Yep, that's right. We're breaking down some powerful insights and trying to really keep it real on what's happening in the economy right now. So we as individuals and business owners can all try and stay ahead of the curve. So first off, it's important to understand the bigger picture of what's actually going on right now. So Tish, why don't you start us off by helping us understand what the heck are tariffs and why are they getting used?
Absolutely. So tariffs are taxes or duties imposed on imported goods and services. They serve multiple purposes, such as generating revenue for the government, protecting domestic industries from foreign competition, and influencing trade policies. Before the Internal Revenue Service was established in 1862, tariffs actually were the primary source of federal revenue in the United States. In fact, they accounted for about 90% of government income during those early years of the Republic. So, the first major tariff law, the Tariff Act of 1789, was enacted to fund the federal government and encourage domestic manufacturing. So tariffs were a significant revenue source until the introduction of income taxes in 1913. But just because the IRS was established didn't mean that tariffs just went away. It reduced the reliance on tariffs as a primary source of federal revenue. However, tariffs continue to play a role in U.S. economic policies. And historically, tariffs, again, were used to protect domestic industries, generate revenue, and establish trade relationships. Now, over time, the US started shifting towards trade liberalization, especially after World War II. And these efforts, they significantly lowered tariff rates and promoted free trade. However, tariffs are still used today, often as a tool for negotiating trade deals or protecting specific industries.
Okay. Yeah, that was an amazing summary of especially how the US has historically utilized tariffs. I think it's also important to note that it's not just the US that is using these kinds of strategies and methods. Many nations have used tariffs as strategic economic tools, including Germany, South Korea, and China, among many others. And it's important, that it's not just us imposing tariffs, as it kind of seems like right now.
Mhm.
But tariffs are being used toward us as well. And so it's an economic tool that's been around for many, many years. And it's we're going to kind of dive into why the US is implementing the tariffs now. We're going to talk some about that.
Mhm. Mhm.
So the main reason right now behind the concept of tariffs is that the administration thinks it's going to help shield US manufacturers and workers from unfair foreign competition, especially from countries like China, who are producing goods cheaply and sometimes with government subsidies.
A lot of times.
Yeah, a lot of times you're right. By making imported goods more expensive, it encourages consumers and businesses to buy American-made products. Okay. And so these tariffs are intended and meant to incentivize domestic production. If it costs more to import a product, businesses may consider building it in the US instead. The goal is to ultimately bring back manufacturing jobs and boost sectors like automotive and steel.
Yeah, and in fact, several companies are making significant investments in US manufacturing. So we recently, Apple announced a historic $500 billion investment. Hyundai committed to about 20 billion. The Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company pledged 100 billion. And then SoftBank as well plans to invest about 100 billion in the United States, focusing on artificial intelligence, emerging technologies, infrastructure, which is expected to create 100,000 jobs alone. So you're absolutely correct there. And some say that the US has been on the losing end of the trade deals for decades.
Mhm.
Tariffs are a way to push back against those so-called bad deals and forcing trade renegotiations to occur. It's economic pressure meant to get other countries to lower their tariffs and or trade change their trade practices. And the fact is that the US, again, is not the only country who imposes tariffs. It just so happens that the US imports more than it exports, which means that our economy is heavily driven by consumer spending. And consumer spending accounts for about 70% of our GDP. So many goods consumed in the US are imported, reflecting our role as a major global consumer. And this can be viewed as a trade deficit, right? So we have more imports being taxed on tariffs versus exports, right? And charging a tariff tax to other countries. So again, tariffs are a part of an economic strategy to discourage imports and boost exports, which in theory could shrink that deficit, right?
Right. Okay. So the tariff approach is really about protectionism. It's fundamentally based on prioritizing US businesses, US workers, and US industries, even if it comes with some short-term costs like higher prices or trade retaliation, which is also to be expected based on history. We've seen many times that with economic corrections, there tends to first come a little pain before it
Mhm.
gets better. But remember, Ronald Reagan, he was very much a free market advocate, but also wasn't afraid to use tariffs or trade restrictions to protect key industries. And so, what we were able to learn from his policies was that economic strategy isn't always just black and white.
Mhm.
Sometimes a free market leader will still use targeted tariffs to protect jobs and industries. So the key is knowing when to apply the pressure and when to let the market breathe.
Mhm.
Now, let's be very clear here. We're not here to get into any kind of political debate. We're here simply trying to help people understand the factual, historical, and philosophical concepts behind what's going on right now, what we're seeing in the media and the news. And so, whether or not this tariff strategy will work out in the long term is being debated like crazy right now, as you all can see.
Mhm.
And we can't sit here and say for sure, one way or the other, how this is all going to work out. What we can do, though, is try and help you be prepared for either way.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start with the basics. What's going on with tariffs in our country right now? So President Trump recently proposed a 10% universal tariff on all imported goods and a 25% tariff specifically on foreign made cars. And y'all, this isn't just political talk again. It affects our wallets, our businesses, our families.
Right. And tariffs are simply taxes on imported goods, as you were mentioning earlier. So when the government adds those taxes, companies don't just eat that cost. They pass that cost on to us as the consumers. And so we end up paying more for cars, appliances, clothes, electronics, all of it.
Yep. Yep. And let's be honest, if you're living paycheck to paycheck or managing a small business with tight margins, it's kind of a policy that this kind of a policy change can be a big deal for all of us.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, what does that mean? So that, it can be a struggle for the individuals and the business owners, but what it means for our economy, we need to look at that. Tariffs can lead to inflation, prices go up, but your income doesn't, which is inflation. And so that can be a recipe for struggle. Especially if you're not planning ahead. And so we're trying to do that, aren't we, Tish?
Yes, yes, absolutely. Plus, there's also the risk of trade wars. Other countries might and are responding by putting their own tariffs on American goods, which can hurt our exports.
Yep.
So,
Bottom line, this kind of policy can create some uncertainty. And so it can delay some investments, shake the market, lower consumer confidence, and that can be kind of scary for businesses.
right, right. But here's the thing, you can't control the economy. You can control how you position yourself in it, though, right? Have you heard of short-term pain for long-term gain?
Absolutely. That's what we generally see. Um, okay, so for small business owners, this matters, big time. So many of us rely on, international suppliers for packaging, raw materials, inventory, and now, in this case, your costs may go up. So you're stuck kind of deciding whether do you raise prices or do you cut your profits?
And then for everyday consumers, especially the middle income families, this means higher prices on essentials as well, from clothing to food to cars. That hits the hardest when you're on a budget that's already tight.
For sure. And so what do we do about it? Well, we stay informed, we stay proactive, we don't wait until, it's a crisis. We start looking at our supply chains, we start looking at our pricing models, at our savings right now today, so we can hopefully be prepared.
Mhm.
Tish, what do you think some smart strategies are for kind of getting ahead of it?
Yeah, so let's look at some ways to protect yourself. First, review your vendors and your contracts. Can you source products locally? Can you lock in prices now before the tariffs hit? Then look at cash flow. Cash is still king. In times of economic shakeups, the goal isn't flashy growth, it's financial stability as well.
Yeah, so that means building up reserves, reducing unnecessary spending, being, super intentional with your investments, that
Mhm.
sort of thing. And for business owners, maybe it's automating or streamlining operations, seeing if there are ways to reduce dependency on imports, that kind of thing.
hmm hmm So here's something most people aren't even talking about from the perspective of global investment trends. Over $4 trillion in global is flowing into the US. That's not random. That's because despite all of the political drama, the US is still seen as a safe place to grow wealth.
For sure. Yeah. And if the world's wealthiest investors are putting their money into US markets, the rest of us should be paying attention.
Mhm.
So, are we investing in our own backyard the way, the billionaires are?
Correct. This is why we keep teaching our clients how to leverage tax-free retirement accounts,
Right.
index strategies, smart estate planning, right?
Right.
Um, it is best to make your money work on your vision. Um, if it's just sitting, don't leave it sleeping in silence, if you will.
Mm. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Um,
So let's go ahead and bring it home. You know, you don't have to predict the future. You just have to be prepared for it.
yeah, yeah. And I think that's probably the thing that we focus on ourselves and we help, our clients is it's about being resilient. It's about being adaptable, being open to new ideas. And, these are the real wealth building traits that you see in the most successful people. So don't get stuck on any one product or platform or even, a single plan. Get stuck on your why and your purpose and let your strategy evolve with the times because life is going to throw you curveballs many times.
It always does.
Yes, many, many times. And the economy is going to continue to change. Policies are going to continue to shift. But if we stay informed, we stay flexible, we stay focused, we win.
Mhm. So here's what we want you to walk away with. Stay informed, pay attention to policy and global trends, audit your business, audit your personal finances. Where can you create margin and flexibility? Invest intentionally. Don't let fear keep you frozen. Build cash reserves. Also, eliminate the waste. And most importantly, stay committed to your long-term vision, no matter what the market is doing. Keep that vision in front of you.
Yeah. I think that's one of the biggest Warren Buffett things,
Yep,
know what you're doing, know what you're investing in, and just stay true to that vision.
correct.
Yeah. And if you're not sure how to apply this in your own situation, we're here to help. Whether you're managing your household finance or running a business, we can, potentially help you build a strategy that works no matter what the headlines are saying.
Mhm. All right. Well, thanks for joining us on this episode of Talk Money with Tish. If you found this helpful, please share it with a friend and be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next time, keep building, keep believing, and keep talking money with Tish.